Hi friends, my name is Kaylee and welcome to my little bookish corner of the internet. I am so beyond excited to share this video with you today because it is long overdue, so let's just skip the pleasantries because what better way to introduce myself than to share my favorite books of all time. It's going to be an accumulation of both standalones and series, so let's get into it. Starting strong, we have Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. This follows Yasmin and Josiah as they fall in love in college, get married, have 2 children, and open a restaurant together. They end up experiencing a loss that is so devastating and tragic that they end up getting divorced. So this is all about them navigating life after loss. They're successfully co-parenting and co-owning their business. Slowly but surely, they're starting to find joy again, and before we know it, one kiss leads to another, but they can only pretend that all is good and well for so long. I actually read this book as an ARC, which is an advanced reader's copy, so essentially I read it a couple of months before the traditional release date in exchange for an honest review. I never read anything by this author before, but I was looking for a change of pace when I found this on NetGalley. The cover is actually what caught my eye, but it being a second chance romance is what sealed the deal for me. That is probably my favorite trope of all time. Give me a marriage in shambles and some of that jealousy trope and we're ready for a good time, okay? I would also say there's a little close proximity. I don't want to say forced, but they're doing it for the kids, okay? Let me tell you though, when I finished this book, I immediately added her entire backlist to my wish list. I may be a little biased in regards to the story structure because it is told in a dual POV, and I find that that's the most effective way to tell a story. It serves a greater purpose when it comes to character development and pacing. So what I appreciate most about this book is that the centric narrative revolves around destigmatizing the conversations and beliefs surrounding mental health. We talk a lot about therapy and its approaches not being universal. Kennedy Ryan encourages even the most put together individuals to seek the guidance they may need when it comes to their mental and emotional well-being. While the ending may be a happily ever after, it isn't a perfect ending. These are just 2 individuals that were stronger together than they were apart. Also, let's talk about how the adults actually acted like adults in this book. They didn't shy away from those difficult conversations involving their past. I stand on the ground that Yasmin and Josiah are truly soulmates because their love stood the test of time. I'm not saying the journey was seamless by any means, but it was rooted in pure love. Overall, this is one of my best reads of 2022, and no words will ever do it justice. Next is Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. This is a second chance romance set in a small lakeside town that follows our main characters, Sam Florrick and Persephone Fraser. It's told in alternating timelines over the span of 6 summers and a weekend over a decade later. During their childhood, the 2 were inseparable. They both worked at the Florrick's restaurant, and naturally, spending as much time as they did together, we see their friendship turn into a little something more. Time jump to the present day. Percy lives in the city, and she's determined to keep everyone at an arm's length. That is until she gets a call from Sam's brother asking her to come back to Barry's Bay because their mother passed away. She decides to use this weekend to get the closure she needs from Sam and the memories attached to him. Now, this book will always be one of my most memorable reads. I was reading it the moment I found out my brother passed away, and I say that because I found comfort in knowing that I wasn't the only one grieving, even if it was between myself and fictional characters. So perhaps you're experiencing something similar and you can resonate with that. With that being said, the caliber of writing is just so digestible, as it is with most of the books I'm recommending. Especially being in such a vulnerable state of mind at the time, it was the aspect I truly valued the most. I will say I sort of trauma blocked all of it out, so I'm just asking you to trust my word. Perhaps it's a little presumptuous of me, but what can I say? I'm an ambitious one. I will leave you with this though. It is for lovers of the Summer I Turned Pretty series by Jenny Han and Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. This brings me to my next book, Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren, also a second chance romance set in a small town. It follows the story of Macy and Elliot from when they first meet as kids living in neighboring vacation homes to falling in love and simultaneously falling apart. It all leads up to a reunion years after their disastrous breakup. If you couldn't tell, I live for the drama. When fate brings them together again, they come to understand the truth behind their separation. It's just so simple. Everything about it is so quiet. They're both book lovers that would rather be cuddled up with a book by the fire instead of out partying. Well, that may not be true, actually. I will just put the statement out there. I was not expecting the ending. I'll leave it at that. I don't trust myself nearly enough to talk more about this book. I'm definitely going to spoil it if I keep going, so on to the next book. Equally as enticing as 1,000 Heartbeats by Kiera Cass, I consider this to be historical fiction interwoven with fantasy. It follows Princess Annika after she learns she's destined for a loveless marriage with her cousin. I'm asking lots of questions too. I'm not sure why we normalized that, but we did. Apparently it's okay because it's for political gain. What do I know? I'm just a woman. Meanwhile, we've got Lennox. I love that man. He's devoted his life to taking back the throne that he believes was wrongfully taken from them in his attempts to overthrow Annika's land, because yes, it was her people that stole the throne. Love just takes them both by storm. Without a doubt, this is an enemies to lovers, marriage of convenience, forbidden romance, forced proximity. I read this as an arc and I wasn't sure what to expect. I did request it because it was written by Carrie. I absolutely loved the selection series when I read it in elementary school, but a couple of weeks ago I read one of the novellas and I was definitely questioning my younger taste. So I wasn't sure how her current writing was going to compare, hence me being a little nervous. At the time I read it, it was definitely out of my comfort zone, but I absolutely fell in love with it. I was in a reading slump for about 3 to 6 months, and fantasy was the genre that got me out of it and simultaneously put me back in it a couple months later. I read the Harry Potter series during quarantine, and I didn't read anything fantasy after that. I was so hyperfixated on it. I genuinely cannot like anything in a chill way. I am obsessive to my core. So I think I may have gone a little overboard on the fantasy genre, but this definitely made it a contender again. Our female protagonist was written so beautifully. I mean, there wasn't a side to her I didn't love. She was equally forgiving and assertive. She was never the damsel in distress that needed a man to solve her problems for her. So thank God for independent women. And don't even get me started on her bond with her brother Aeschylus. I don't want to spoil this book, but I'm definitely manifesting a book between Aeschylus and his love interest. Also, her friendship with Naomi, oh my goodness, I absolutely love women, and I think the bonds we share are so wholesome. Also, world building is such an important aspect of the fantasy genre. I'm gonna argue it is the most important aspect. She gave us just enough of a visual to understand what was going on without making it excruciatingly painful. The pacing of the story was genuinely some of the best I've ever seen. It's written to give you just as many questions as there are answers. The story is separated into 3 parts to keep the momentum going. By starting each part in the 3rd person POV when the rest of the story is written in the 1st person POV, the author was foreshadowing the events of the following chapters in a way that paralleled both the past and the future. Going back to the women's fiction and romance genres, we've got One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. No amount of words will ever express just how much I love this book. I am on a mission to convert everyone into reading this book and becoming Taylor Jenkins Reid lovers like it's my religion. To give you a little synopsis, Emma Blair marries her high school sweetheart Jesse. He's a nature photographer and she's a freelance writer. The day before their 1-year wedding anniversary, he gets this amazing opportunity to go to Alaska on assignment, and when he gets there, his helicopter crashes. That's not normal. No one just goes missing like that. Actually, maybe they do. I'm gonna safely assume it's rare though, but naturally everyone just assumes he's dead because he's gone for years. Now Emma's in shambles, as anyone would be. So she goes back home and resigns herself to living the life that both she and Jesse were adamant about getting away from. She ends up taking over her parents' bookstore and she reunites with her childhood friend Sam, who, let's call it as it is, was absolutely in love with her, pining for her. He was down bad, okay? Still is apparently. So she gives the man a chance, but get this. They get engaged, go to dinner, then she gets a call from a mysterious number. She doesn't recognize it, but for the sake of the plot, she picks it up, and it's her husband. He goes, "Hey babe, I'm alive, I'm coming home." So now she's got a fiance and a husband, the best of both worlds. So this entire novel is her just trying to navigate these unusual circumstances. Now let me tell you, I thought I predicted the ending on multiple different occasions, and every time I would come to a conclusion, my mind would change again. I didn't expect this to be so suspenseful. It was so angsty and I live for the drama. I want it noted though that I was a Sam girly from page 1. I mean, the man worked at her parents' bookstore, for crying out loud. As a reader, it was my right to fall in love with him. There was a moment where I considered that Taylor Jenkins Reid was going to turn this into an empowering story of female independence and she was gonna do this "I choose me." I was not living for that, okay? But let me just reassure you, she does choose someone and it isn't herself. Next, we've got People We Meet on Vacation. I'm not sure if you've seen any reviews anywhere, but you either love it or hate it, okay? I personally love it, as you can tell. It's another alternating timeline vacation romance, so sue me. I clearly got a type. People We Meet on Vacation is all about Poppy and Alex. They are not alike in the slightest. Complete opposites. As they say, opposites attract. So they become the best of friends, and as friends do, they go on a vacation every year for a decade. We clearly are in different tax brackets, okay? But he lives in their small hometown and she lives in New York City because the girlies always have to live in a city. But they always cherish this one week that they get to spend with each other amongst their busy lives. Everything was good and dandy up until 2 years ago. Oh my god, what happened? Nobody knows. That's the whole premise of the story, is you finding out what happens. Moving on to present day, Poppy is unhappy. She's going through a semi-midlife crisis. When was the last time she was happy? That's the question of the hour. Nobody knows. Let me tell you, it was the last vacation she took with Alex. So naturally, to try and get herself out of this rut, she calls up her ex-bestie and says, let's go on vacation together. Recipe for disaster? You tell me. They're going to take the chance of one more vacation together to lay everything on the table. They're going to air out the dirty laundry. Miraculously, he agrees. What could possibly go wrong? If you're looking to live vicariously through someone else, read this book. Look, I'm not going to play ignorant. I understand that the ending was anticlimactic, but let me tell you, this is the definition of comfort read. Pure nostalgia. I am usually a very composed reader. I've learned to mask my emotions, especially when reading certain books. Tell me you're picking up what I'm putting down. But I couldn't read this in public. It was the equivalent of when you get seated next to your best friend in school and your teacher has to separate you because you just can't stop laughing. I was a die-hard enemies to lovers girl before I started reading Emily Henry, but now I've been converted to friends to lovers, which I believe to be the superior trope. Emily Henry is just healing my inner child, so she deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for that. Book lovers. Book girls love reading books about book girls. So if you're a book girly in need of some validation, this may be for you. Nora Stevens is a literary agent. She's got quite the reputation, okay? She's gonna speak her mind, as she should. Even though she's seen with this brutal intensity, she's got a lot of love for her family. So naturally, when her sister Libby begs her to go on vacation to Sunshine Falls, another small town in North Carolina, she agrees. And would you look at that? Enter Charlie Lastra, the love of my life. But he's another bookish, brooding editor, also living in the city, also on vacation in Sunshine Falls, North Carolina. But it isn't actually a vacation for him because he's actually helping run his parents' bookshop. They could not be any more different, much like Poppy and Alex, but this is a grumpy girl sunshine boy, I would say. Moving on to series, we've got the Women in Fame series by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It is an interconnected series of standalones, though I use the words interconnected and series loosely. Let's start with Daisy Jones and the Six. Now, I'm sure you all are no strangers to this series because it was just adapted to a TV show. It takes place in the late 60s, early 70s and follows a girl, Daisy Jones, that is coming of age in LA. Her parents are very neglectful, so she's turned to sex, drugs, and sneaking into clubs along the Sunset Strip. But what she truly loves is rock and roll, and while she's passionate about writing the songs, she isn't as passionate about singing them. But she's determined to make a way for herself. Now, in the book, there is some nepotism working alongside her, so for those of you that are currently watching the TV show but have yet to read the book, that is a pretty significant difference. Now, into the band The Six, they've just moved from Pittsburgh to LA in their attempts to make it in the industry. Billy Dunn, the lead singer, has just learned that his girlfriend is pregnant, so he goes a little wild. Now, Daisy and the Six cross paths because they share the same producer. He believes that they are going to be better together than they are apart, and they're the recipe for success that he's been looking for this entire time. I don't even know where to start with this book because I absolutely love it. The structure of the story is just so different from anything I've read before. I was not expecting it in the slightest. It is set up interview style, as you can see, so we aren't actually sure what the true story is because we're getting it from everyone's perspective. That is insane. This is the literary definition of the word angst. Once again, this is another one of those reads that is perfect for every reader, no matter where you are in your journey. There are so many intricate layers to the story that keep you engaged throughout its entirety. Taylor Jenkins Reid is one of the very few authors that has mastered the art of storytelling. There's lots of substance abuse and addiction in this book, though she acknowledges that the glamorization that took place during this time period was more damaging than anything. While I wouldn't exactly say Daisy is an individual that I look up to, she is still inspiring. She demands credit where credit is due. She definitely supports women's rights and wrongs. Without a doubt. I think Billy Dunn is a contender for the worst literary male, right alongside McRiva. The two are like two peas in a pod. I just don't know which one is worse. It takes a talented author to make all of their characters as multifaceted and well-developed as Taylor Jenkins Reid does. Even though the story mainly revolves around the narrative between Camilla, Billy, and Daisy, all of the other characters aren't forgotten. They're just as important. This is just the beginning of me peer pressuring you to read not only this book, but all of the rest of her books. That leads us to the infamous The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. We learn all about Evelyn Hugo and her 7 husbands, just as the title mentions. In all seriousness, we learn that Evelyn Hugo, the timeless icon as she is, she's going to tell the scandalous story of her life and how it led her to having these 7 husbands. But she chooses ordinary Monique for the job. Monique, who is in a rut of her own, in a loveless marriage and a failing career, is just not going to ask questions. Going from the 1950s to the 1980s, we learn about her ruthless ambitions, the unexpected friendships she made along the way, and the story no one knows about her forbidden love. But as we get to the end of the story, we learn just exactly why Evelyn has chosen Monique for this opportunity. Let me tell you, this was one of the first books I ever gave 5 stars to. I'm not sure if it was because I was on a reader high, but we're just not going to question it. I'm going to trust my instinct, as you probably should too. Now, I usually don't cry while reading books. Actually, that's not true. At this point in my life, I usually didn't cry while reading books, but I was shamelessly sobbing at some ungodly hour in the morning. It's just a powerful story about the pressure to conform to societal norms. It also touches on discovering your sexuality and just being comfortable and content in it. Usually my complaint about characters is their lack of depth. They're always portrayed to be a little more perfect than the average person, but even that slight difference just makes it lose its relatability. It no longer falls within the realm of believability. This couldn't be any further from the truth with not only Evelyn and Hugo, but also the side characters. Each and every one of them was so intricate and nuanced. At the point I'd read it, it had been years since I connected with something so deeply, so I truly do appreciate it for what it was. Then we've got Malibu Rising. Take a wild guess as to what timeline this takes place in. Yup, you guessed it. Alternating timelines, also with present and past POV. So it goes between the 1950s when June meets Vic Riva, an upcoming actor, also the bane of my existence, the epitome of everything that's wrong with this world. They fall in love, get married, have children. Then we time jump to Malibu in the 1980s. It tells the story of the famous end of the summer Riva party. Each chapter takes place during a different hour leading up to and during the party, up until the house burns down. That wasn't a spoiler, it's on the back of the book. There's a lot of drama in this. It is so dysfunctional family coded. Matilda girlies, these recommendations are just for you. Been there, done that. Nina is a famous supermodel and surfer. She's also the oldest of the Riva bunch. The party takes place at her house after her pro tennis player husband cheats on her. Yep, all men do is lie and cheat. Then we've got Jay, another championship surfer. Now he's got a little crush on this girl and he invites her to this party, so the entire night is him just waiting for her to show up, and then once she does, the rest is history. I actually can't tell you anything because I'll spoil it. Then we've got Hud, who is a renowned photographer. He is very close to Jay. He's also keeping a secret from Jay, one that will potentially break his heart. He isn't quite sure yet, but there's a lot of pressure in that situation. It's very tense. Then we've got Kit, who is also keeping a secret, but she invited a special party guest that no one knows about, and this person is just going to show up and destroy everything like they always do. Now that you've read Malibu Rising, you are no stranger to Carrie Soto. She's this fierce, bloodthirsty pro tennis player that shattered every record there is, earning her the title of the best player the world's ever seen, and also simultaneously earning the nickname the Battle Axe. Carrie Soto is unlike anything Taylor Jenkins Reid has written before. I usually avoid books that revolve around athletes. I find the writing to be monotonous and overly technical. Our story starts with Carrie's childhood rise to fame, then leading into the injury that led to her going into retirement, and climaxing with the return to the sport that she so passionately loves. For such a broad timeline, the pacing was absolutely perfect, and as always, we've got those iconic Taylor Jenkins Reid lines. Spoiler for Malibu Rising if you've yet to read it. I went into this expecting that Carrie's affair with Brandon would be a core plot point, but I'm so relieved it wasn't. She is Carrie Soto, not an extension of whoever she chooses to date. For those of you that follow my book talk, you know I've been absolutely obsessed with the Redemption Hill series by A.L. Jackson lately. Now, it is a dark romance series, so it surprises me that I'm recommending it because I usually find that whenever books are marketed as dark romance, they tend to just blur the lines of consent and romanticize abuse and assault. But not this series. I am so excited because anytime I would have that discussion with people, they would always ask me what books I would recommend instead. I never had an answer until now. Give Me a Reason is the first book in the series. It follows Eda Murphy, a kindergarten teacher that is looking for a second job. She ends up at Absolution. It is a nightclub owned by one of her students' fathers, Trent Lawson. It's a small town single dad opposites attract, slightly enemies to lovers romance. Then we've got the second book, Say It's Forever, that follows Salem Aguilar, a single mom stranded on the side of the road in the middle of the storm, and Judd Lawson, the Brody biker that gives her a place to stay for the night. They've both got dark pasts, but she's still running from hers, living in the shadows. It's another small town single mom second love romance. Never Look Back is the next installment. It is also a tie for one of my favorites. It follows Logan Lawson, the youngest of the Lawson brothers, and his ex-lover, Astor Costa. He wants her in a bet. Just trust me on this. She sees it as her last opportunity to escape this dark and dangerous life that she's been forced to live. It is a forced marriage, not between her and Logan. I do want to make that clear. Second chance, close proximity, friends to lovers to enemies to lovers, small town romance. Last, we've got Promise Me Always. This was actually the first book I read in this series. The author is the absolute sweetest, and she sent me a signed copy. I mean, look at that. It follows Milo Hendricks, a bouncer at Absolution, and Tessa McDaniels, Eden's best friend. They've decided to pretend to get married so he can get custody of his kids back. It's a small town, single dad, fake relationship, second love, friends to lovers romance that earned its spot as my first 5-star read of 2023. Now I've saved the best for last, so I truly am manifesting you've all made it to this point because I believe this to be, without a doubt, the best book recommendation I will ever give. These are my most annotated books. And if you follow my book talk, you already probably guessed what this is. The Addicted and Calloway Sisters series by Krista and Becca Ritchie. Now, depending when you're watching this, you might only know it as the Addicted series because it is currently being republished through Berkeley Romance under one series title. Now, I know 10 books seems like a lot, but trust me, once you get to the end, you wish there were more. Just to give you a little synopsis, we start with the first 3 books in the Addicted series. We've got Addicted to You, Ricochet, and then Addicted for Now. They are childhood best friends that are currently in college pretending to be in a relationship to hide their addictions from both their families and the public. She's a sex addict and he's an alcoholic, and they both are heirs to Fortune 500 companies. So they're doing this not only for the sake of their reputations, but that of their families. That brings me to our next book. It is the first book in the Calloway Sisters series, but the 4th book in the Addicted and Calloway Sisters series if you're reading it in order. I just want it noted that I do recommend reading both the Addicted and Calloway Sisters series. It in and of itself is an experience. As I mentioned earlier, they are being republished through Berkeley, so it's all going to be one series anyway. But this book follows Rose Calloway, Lily's older sister, and Connor Cobalt, her romantic partner. I just don't see them as a couple that uses boyfriend-girlfriend terms. I can't tell you too much because I don't want to spoil the series. Rose's clothing line, Calloway Couture, isn't doing too well. You learn why in the Addicted book. So at a last chance grab to save it, her and the other Calloway sisters and their respective partners sign on to do this reality TV show called Princesses of Philly. This book is all about the behind the scenes drama that takes place. And let me tell you, there is a lot. If you are an academic rivals to lovers girly, you are going to love this book. Then we move on to my favorite Calloway sister, Daisy Calloway, in her book Hot House Flower. That feels a little like being a parent and saying a child is your favorite. I'm just keeping it real. I know you all have a favorite Calloway sister. Now in this book, Daisy just turned 18, so she's got this newfound independence from her overbearing mother. As a model, she decides she's going to take on Paris Fashion Week alone. Once again, I can't go into too much detail because it will spoil all of the other books that come before it. But while she's in Paris, everything is just spiraling out of control, so Reich Meadows, her best friend, comes to the rescue. There's so much I want to say and so much I cannot say, but she's a daredevil. She likes to live life on the edge. Her books are just so exhilarating. Now this is a friends to lovers age gap romance. Then we go back to Lily and Lo's story for the last 2 books in the Addicted series. We've got Thrive and then Addicted After All. Going back to the Calloway Sisters series, we've got Fuel the Fire, another Rose and Connor book. This one is definitely angstier than the last. As a Razy stan, I am a little biased, but this was a close favorite. I'm just limiting myself. There's nothing I can actually say about this series without spoiling anything. But this is all about protecting your family and taking care of the ones you love. Mostly, I would say it's a story about staying true to yourself. Yep, that's about all I can say. Now we move on to my absolute favorite book in the entire series. It is probably my favorite book to ever exist. It is my comfort read. I'm questioning my mental sanity at that. It is Long Way Down, another Daisy and Reich story. Now you could end the series here if you wanted to. After this you've got 1, maybe 2 depending on what you choose, novels left. So why not just complete the series? Potential spoiler? I'm gonna be completely transparent though. I think it's pretty obvious. In this novel, Reich and Daisy get married. I say it's pretty obvious because you could safely assume that all of these couples are gonna end up getting married because they do. But potential spoiler, I guess. Out of all of the books in the Addicted and Calloway Sisters series, this is definitely the most heartbreaking. It just kept going. Every time you thought this can't get any worse, this is the lowest of lows, it got so much worse. I say worse as in the situation was very unfortunate. I promise you I will make a more in-depth video on this series, but all you need to know is they're doing what adventurers do. They're taking risks, climbing rocks and each other. The last book in the series is Some Kind of Perfect. It is an epilogue novel, so you don't necessarily need to read it. I definitely recommend it though. It is just wholesome moments of the core 6 and their kids. Just seeing this beautiful family, both found and blood, that they've put together. warms my heart. It's definitely the longest book in the series. It starts in 2018 and ends in 2028. Then we've got Bad Reputation that follows Garrison and Willow. I keep telling you this, but I actually can't tell you anything because it'll spoil the entire series. This one will definitely spoil the entire series if I tell you who these people even are. But they are two very important people in Lauryn Hill's life, so what's important to Lauryn Hill is important to me. It's definitely a bad boy, innocent girl situation. Willow is 17 and she's just moved across the country for reasons I cannot tell you. Both her and Garrison end up working at the same shop together. There you go. There's my spoiler-free synopsis. That concludes my Holy Grail literature recommendations. If you're looking for more of my content, I've linked all my socials down below. I post daily on my book talk and you can stay updated on my current reads over on Goodreads. If you want to read with me, I've got a book club over on Fable. It's called Lessons in Love and you should totally join. It's such an amazing little community and I made so many friends. My Bookstagram DMs are always open. I'd love to know what you're currently reading, what books you recommend, and if you take any of these book recommendations, I'd love to know your thoughts. I love you all, and as always, happy reading.